Now that we've seen a little more about how Android layout works, and we've seen the relationship between the design view here and the text XML behind it, we're in a position to see how we can do more to manipulate the objects on our screen, the views. And we're going to start by looking at a fading animation, which is actually pretty straightforward. So to make this a little bit more interesting, I'm going to get a couple of images of my favorite cartoon characters. I suggest you get a couple of images that interest you as well. So I've got Homer Simpson here on Wikipedia, and I'm just going to control click or right click and save image as, and then just pop him there on the desktop. And the same thing with Bart. So I'll click on him and save image as. There we go. You might be wondering why we've got two images that we're working on. Well, that will become clear in the exercise at the end of this video. So let's create a new app. So new project. I'll call it animations. All the default options. And finish. There we go. As this is being created for me, can you remember how we add an image to our app? Well, the easiest way is to find the image either in Finder if you're on a Mac or Explorer if you're on Windows. I'm going to just rename them to two very straightforward file names. So just Bart and Homer. And then I'm going to select both of them and Command C or Control C if you're on Windows to copy them. And then we go into the drawable folder and Command V or Control V to paste them in. So there they are, Bart and Homer. Let's switch over to our design view, and then we'll get rid of our Hello World text view, and I'm going to create a full screen image of Bart to start off with. So we do that with an image view, and so now we can pay a bit more attention to what we can see there. So I want it to be at the exact top left, which it's not wanting to do. So I'll just drag it in where I can and change the width to match parent and the height to match parent as well. And then you can see we've got top left on the alignment, which looks good. And if we just have a quick look at the text of our layout, there's the code for our image view, and that all looks pretty positive. So we've got aligned at the parent top, parent left, and parent start, and there's no padding or margins there despite what it implied when we dropped it in. So that's exactly where we want it. That's great. And then we want to set the image here. So if we scroll down, it's the SRC, remember, that we're interested in, so the source, and we should be able to click the little button there and then scroll down inside the drawable folder. Down at the bottom should be Bart and Homer. There we go. So we'll start off with Bart, and there he is. Wonderful. Now you may have noticed as you've been messing around with your images that we have an on-click property here with images as well as buttons, so you don't have to have a button to be able to click it. So I'm going to assign the fade method to our picture of Bart here. So when we tap Bart, the fade method is going to be called, which means of course we have to go and create the fade method. So let's do that. We're hopefully pretty familiar with this now. So public, accessible from anywhere, void, it's not returning anything, and the name of the method is fade. It's going to be called by a view once again. This is going to be an image view this time, but that doesn't really make any difference to our code. So it's be called by a view, and we'll call the view view. And let's import android.view.view to allow that. There we go. So all that we want to happen is for the image to fade out, essentially, when we tap it. So first of all, we have to get the image, just like we did with the edit text fields before. So let's just double click. So it's got an ID of image view. I think I'm going to change that to something a bit more specific. So I'll call it Bart. There we go. And then previously, when we wanted to get a view, we used text edit because that was the type of view that we were getting. But this time we're getting an image view. Start typing image view with a capital I. Capital I, remember, because it's a class. There we go. And again, I'll call it Bart. And to get this, we're going to find view by ID. And as we've seen before, it's resources.id and then the name of the ID, which is Bart. So now we've got the image view, but we've got it as a view. We want it as an image view. So we just put image view in parentheses beforehand. There we go. So now we've got our variable Bart, which is equal to our image view, and we just want to fade it out. So how do we do that? Well, we take Bart and we're going to call the animate method. There it is. So it's what you might anticipate we might want to use. And all you have to do with the animate method is tell the compiler what you want to change and how long you want to allow for the change to happen. So let's say we want to fade the image out. What we want to actually change is the alpha. So I think we've come across alpha briefly before, but if you haven't seen it before, alpha is a number generally from 0 to 1 which represents how transparent the image is. So an alpha value of 0 says that the image is invisible. An alpha value of 1 says it's completely visible. So at the moment it has an alpha value of 1. We want to change it to an alpha value of 0. There we go. And now you notice that we've got something here. This expects a float value. Now 0 will automatically be converted to a float, but it's better to just specify that we want 0 as a float. And that's the conventional way of doing it. Even though if you don't put that F in here, it will work, but it won't work with certain other numbers. If, for example, you tried putting 0.5 in, that wouldn't work. You have to put 0.5 F to be clear that it's a float that we want to put in here. So 0.5 by default is a double. We want to make it into a float, so we use 0.5 F. So generally, we just put an F in every time just to make it clear that we want a float. And then we set the duration. So set duration. And then this is the number of milliseconds, so thousandths of a second. So if you wanted it to last 2 seconds, for example, then you would put in 2000. There we go. And that's it. Semicolon. And that's everything we need. So we take the variable Bart, which is equal to our image view, and we want to animate it. We want to set the alpha to 0, which is basically making it invisible. And we want that to happen over the course of 2 seconds or 2000 milliseconds. That's it. Let's have a look. So now if we run this, we should find that we get our Bart image nice and large, and then when we tap on the Bart image, we fade it out. Let's take a look. So there he is. There's Bart. If we now tap on him, you can see he slowly fades away over 2 seconds. Fantastic. So that's how you do fades, and this is going to be the basis of pretty much all the animations that we do, and we'll run through a lot of different types of animations pretty quickly in the next video. For now though, I've got a challenge for you, and it's not a completely straightforward one. What I want you to do is change the function of this app, so instead of just Bart fading out, we've got Bart fading into Homer. So initially when you load the app, you just see Bart, just like now, but then when you tap on him, he fades out and Homer fades in. This is known as a crossfade and is a really nice way to transition from one view to another. So not straightforward, but hopefully you can figure it out. Best of luck. Okay, did you manage it? I hope so. The way I would do it is bring in a second image view, which is going to be our Homer image, and we'll align it at the top left, and again we'll change the width to match parent, and same with the height. So there we go, and this time the SRC, the source, is going to be Homer. So let's just load him. So scrolling down inside the drawable section, there he is. Wonderful. Okay, great. So now we can see Homer on top of Bart there because they're nice transparent images, which is not what we want. We want Homer to not be visible at the beginning. So what we can do is scroll up here and set the alpha for Homer to be 0. There we go. So now Homer disappears, and you can have a nice little play there as well. If you want to see what it's like with a alpha of 0.5, then you get this kind of semi-visible Homer there. So that's what alpha values between 0 and 1 look like. But for now, we want an alpha of 0. There we go. Let's just have a quick look and see what that looks in the XML. So here's our Homer code, and you can see it's very similar to the Bart code, except we've got alpha is equal to 0 at the bottom. So you could have done this just by adding that code at the bottom if you wanted. So I'm going to change the ID, this time using the XML, because why not? And all I do is change that to Homer there. And everything else is the same as before. So back over to our design view and then over to our Java file. So we still want Bart to fade out in exactly the same way he did before, but this time we want Homer to fade in. So we need to get Homer. So we use the same code as before, but this time we're going to call our variable Homer, and the ID of the object that we're looking for is also Homer. And then this line to fade Homer in is going to be very similar to the Bart line. So Homer and then animate. This time, of course, we're going to set the alpha to 1. And we'll do it over the same duration. So 2000 milliseconds or 2 seconds. And that's it. Let's just have a look. We'll run it on the already running emulator. And there it is. So now we tap on Bart, and slightly eerily, he transitions nicely into Homer there. So that's how we do a crossfade. Obviously, tapping again doesn't do anything. A nice extra challenge that I won't go through with you, but might be to tap on Homer to get him to transition back into Bart and then go back and forth. That's fairly straightforward, really. It's just creating another method which would fade Homer out and Bart back in and assigning that to the Homer image. Alright, so that's fading transitions. We're going to look at a lot more different types of transition, all of which we can do within this animate method in the next video.